A student's overview of the ageless wisdom was carefully compiled from the following books by Alice A. Bailey. A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Esoteric Psychology, Volumes 1 and 2. Esoteric Healing. Esoteric Astrology. The Rays and the Initiations. Students are encouraged to download the free PDF version of this overview by following the link in the video's description, or to order a printed copy at cost from thebookpatch.com, but are advised to read the original, unabridged books in order to gain deeper insight into the ageless wisdom. Students are also invited to join our online study group at facebook.com/groups/students of the ageless wisdom. Chapter 44 Esoteric Psychology Volume 2. Problems of Integration. One of the first things which happens when a man has succeeded, alone or with academic psychological aid, in healing or bridging certain cleavages is the recognition of an immediate sense of well-being and of demand for expression. This in its turn, brings its own problems, among which are these. A sense of power, which makes the man, temporarily at least, selfish, dominant, sure of himself and full of arrogance. He is aware of himself as facing a larger world, a wider horizon, and greater opportunities. This larger sense can bring, therefore, serious troubles and difficulties. This type of person, under the influence of this extension of consciousness, is often beautifully motivated and actuated by the highest intentions, but only succeeds in producing inharmony in his surroundings. These tendencies, when allowed to rule unchecked, can lead eventually to a serious state of egomania, for egomania is outstandingly a problem of integration. All these difficulties can be obviated and offset if the man can be brought to realize himself as an integral part of a much greater whole. His sense of values will then be adjusted and his sense of power rightly oriented. A tendency to overemphasis may also show itself, turning the man, as a result of integration and a sense of well-being or power and capacity, into a fanatic, at any rate for a time. Again, with the best motives in the world, he seeks to drive everyone the way that he has come, failing to recognize the differences in background, ray type, point in evolution, and tradition and heredity. He becomes a source of distress to himself and to his friends. A little learning can be a dangerous thing, and the cure for many ills, particularly of a psychological nature, is the recognition of this. Progress can then be made on the path of wisdom. The overdevelopment of the sense of direction or of vocation, if you like to call it so, though the two are not identical, for the sense of direction is less definite than the recognition of vocation. In the schools of esoteric psychology, a phrase is sometimes used in connection with this sense of direction or in a guidance which runs as follows: the bridging of the gaps induces a man continuously to run across the bridge. Certain aspects of the man are now consciously recognized, and the higher of these constantly attracts him. When, for instance, the gap between the astral or emotional body and the mind has been bridged, and the man discovers the vast field of mental activity which has opened up before him, he may for a long time become materialistically intellectual and will tune out as far as he can all emotional reactions and psychic sensitivity, glamoring himself with the belief that they are, for him, non-existent. He will then work intensively on mental levels. This will prove only a passing matter from the point of vision of the soul, even if it lasts an entire incarnation or several incarnations, but it can cause definite psychological problems, and create in the man's perception of life, blind spots. However, much trouble is cured by leaving people alone, provided the abnormality is not too excessive. Once the fact of the soul is admitted, we shall see an increasing tendency to leave people to the directing purpose and guidance of their own souls, provided that they understand what is happening to them and can discriminate between 1. The upward surging of the subconscious self into the lighted area of consciousness. 2. The play and force and recognitions of the immediately conscious self. 3. The downflow of the superconscious self, the soul, carrying inspiration and higher knowledge. These words, subconscious, conscious and superconscious, need definition. For the purpose of this treatise, they are bandied about so freely and mean different things according to the school of psychological thought to which the student belongs. I use the term subconscious to signify the entire instinctual life of the form nature, all the inherited tendencies and innate predispositions, all the acquired and accumulated characteristics, acquired in past incarnations and frequently lying dormant unless suddenly evoked by stress of circumstance, and all the unformulated wishes and urges which drive a man into activity, plus the suppressed and unrecognized desires, and the unexpressed ideas which are present, though unrealized. The subconscious nature is like a deep pool from which a man can draw almost anything from his past experience, if he so desires, and which can be stirred up until it becomes a boiling cauldron, causing much distress. End of page 226. The conscious is limited to that which the man knows himself to be and have in the present, the category of qualities, characteristics, powers, tendencies and knowledge of all kinds which constitute a man's stock in trade and of which he is definitely aware or of which the psychologist is aware. These are displayed in his window for all to see, and they make him what he apparently is to the outer onlooking world. By the superconscious, I mean those potencies and knowledges which are available but which are as yet uncontacted and unrecognized and, therefore, of no immediate use. These are the wisdom, love and abstract idealism which are inherent in the nature of the soul but which are not yet, and never have been a part of the equipment available for use. Eventually, all these powers will be recognized and used by man. Future psychology. It will be apparent to you, therefore, that one of the first studies to be made in this new approach to the psychological field will be to discover 1. Which rays, major and minor, are conditioning and determining the nature of the man, and evoking the quality of his daily life. 2. Which of these 5 energies is, at the time of the difficulty, the most dominant, and through which body or vehicle it is focused. 3. Which of these ray energies is struggling against the imposed dominance, mentioned above. These are a. Varying aspects of the same energy within their own particular field. B. Higher energies which are endeavoring to control the lower energies and therefore indicating a cleavage in the man's nature. C. The energy of the fusion process itself, which unifies the lower energies into one functioning personality. D. The adjustment of the bridging process between the 2 major energies. This will result in the at-one-ment of soul and of the personality. Problems of stimulation. This theme is of outstanding interest at this time because of the mystical tendency and the spiritual urge which distinguishes humanity as a whole, and because of the definite results, some of them bad, many of them good, which the growing practice of meditation is bringing about in the world of men. These results of mystical and spiritual aspiration and of applied occult or intellectual meditation, in contradistinction to the mystical approach, must be faced and understood, or a great opportunity will be lost and certain undesirable developments will appear and need later to be offset. This is a time of unusual crisis. One point, nevertheless, seems impressed upon my mind, and I would like to emphasize it. In these times of crisis and consequent opportunity, it is essential that men should realize two things: first, that it is a time of stimulation, and also that it is a time of crisis for the hierarchy as well as for men. This latter point is oft forgotten. The hierarchical crisis is of great importance, owing to its relative rarity. Human crises are frequent and, from the time angle, of almost regular occurrence. But this is not the case where the hierarchy is concerned. Also, when a human crisis and a hierarchical crisis coincide and are simultaneous, there emerges an hour of dominant opportunity, and for the following reasons. 1. The attention of the great ones is entirely focused, owing to planetary affairs, in one particular direction. A synthesis of planned effort appears. 2. These occasions are so rare that when they do occur, they indicate a solar, as well as a planetary significance. 3. Certain forces and powers, exterior to the government of the solar system, have been called into play, owing to the planetary emergency. This emergency is of such importance, from the angle of consciousness, that the solar logos has seen fit to invoke external agencies to aid. End of page 227. I have consistently emphasized the necessity for our recognition of the existence of energy. In occultism, or esotericism, we use the word energy to connote the living activity of the spiritual realms, and of that spiritual entity, the soul. We use the word force to connote the activity of the form nature in the realms of the various kingdoms in nature. This is a point of dominant interest and of implied distinction. Stimulation might, therefore, be defined as the effect which energy has upon force. It is the effect which soul has upon form, and which the higher expression of divinity has upon what we call the lower expression. Yet all is equally divine in time and space and in relation to the point in evolution and the whole. This energy has the following effects, and I state these effects in various ways in order to produce clarification in the many differing types of minds. 1. An increased rate of rhythm and vibration. 2. A capacity to offset time and, therefore, to do more in 1 hour of so-called time than the average person can do in 2 or 3 hours of time. 3. An upheaval in the personality life which leads, if correctly met, to a clear-sighted meeting of karmic obligations. 4. An intensification of all reactions. This includes all reactions emanating from the world of daily living, and, therefore, from the environment, from the world of aspirational life, from the mind and from the soul, the great reality in the life of the incarnated individual, even if he does not know it. 5. A clarification of life objectives, and hence a dominant emphasis upon the importance of the personality and the personality life. 6. A developing process of destruction which involves issues with which it seems beyond the capacity of the personality to deal. 7. Certain physiological and psychological problems which are based upon the capacity, the inherent weaknesses and strengths and the qualifications of the instruments of reception. It should be remembered here that all stimulation is based upon the reaction, or the power to receive and register, of the lower nature when brought into relation to the higher. It is not based upon the reaction of the higher to the lower. Upon this reception, there eventuates a speeding up of the atoms which compose the personality vehicles. There follows a galvanizing into activity of cells in the brain which have been hitherto dormant, and also of the body areas around the 7 centers, particularly in the organic and physiological correspondences to the centers, plus a grasp of possibilities and of opportunities. These results may work out either in the form of disastrous failure or in the form of significant development. To all this, the stimulation of the nervous system of the subject responds, and hence the effects are pronouncedly physical. These effects may mean release through the proper expenditure of the inflowing energy and consequently no serious effects, even when there may exist undesirable conditions, or they may mean that the instrument is in such a condition that the energy pouring through will be disruptive and dangerous, and all kinds of bad results may be incurred, including mental problems, problems stemming from illumination, problems of guidance, dreams and depression. The etheric centers: Ray 1 Power or Will Head Center, Ray 2 Love Wisdom Heart Center, Ray 3 Active Intelligence Throat Center, Ray 4 Harmony Through Conflict Ajna Center, Ray 5 Concrete Knowledge Sacral Center, Ray 6 Devotion Solar Plexus, Ray 7 Ceremonial Order Base of Spine. End of page 228. I ask you to realize 5 facts. 1. That undeveloped men are energized and galvanized into outer activity through the medium of the 3 centers below the diaphragm. 2. That average man is beginning to function primarily through the solar plexus center and to use it as a transferring center of force for energies which must be carried from below the diaphragm to above the diaphragm. 3. That the world aspirants are slowly being energized and controlled by the forces which are being transferred from the centers below the diaphragm to the throat center and from the soul to the throat center. This leads to creative activity of some kind. 4. That the world disciples are beginning to be governed and controlled by the throat and heart centers and are also beginning to transfer the forces which have been raised to the heart and throat, to the ajna center between the eyebrows, in the middle of the forehead. When this has been done, the man is then an integrated personality. The soul also stimulates the ajna center. 5. That the more advanced disciples and world initiates are also energized from 2 sources, by means of the energies raised up and lifted into the head from all the centers in the body, and by those which pour into the human frame from the soul, via the highest center at the top of the head. The whole process is, as you can see, one of development, use and transference, as is the case in all evolutionary development. There are 2 major transferring centers in the etheric body, the solar plexus and the throat, and 1 master center through which the energy of the soul must pour when the right time comes, pouring consciously and with the full awareness of the disciple. That center is the head center, called in the Eastern philosophy the thousand-petaled lotus. The problem of the average man is, therefore, connected with the solar plexus. The problem of the disciple, the advanced aspirant and the initiate of the lower degrees is connected with the creative center, the throat. The transference of energy. I would here remind students that the following 3 points, related to the transference of energy, must be borne in mind. 1. That there is a transference to be made from all the lower centers to higher ones, and that this is usually done in 2 stages. This transference, carried on within the personality, is paralleled by the transference of spiritual energy from that reservoir of force we call the soul to the man on the physical plane. This becomes possible as the man makes the needed transference within himself. These transferences can take place in the course of the evolutionary process, or they can be hastened through the forced training given to disciples of all degrees. 2. That, within this major field of activity, the following transferences will have to be made. A. The energy of the center at the base of the spine, the organ of the personal will, must be raised and carried up the spinal column to the head center, via the ajna center. B. The energy of the sacral center, governing the sexual life and the organs of physical creation, must be raised to the throat center, which becomes the organ of creative activity of a non-physical nature. C. The energy of the solar plexus, the organ of self-conscious personal desire, must be raised to the heart and there transmuted into group service. 3. That all these centers are developed and brought into activity in 3 stages, and thus progressively condition the outer aspects of a man's life. A. There is a period wherein the centers are active only in a sluggish and semi-dormant manner, the forces of which they are formed, and which they express, move slowly and with a heavy inert rhythm. The light which can be seen wherever there is a center is dim, the point of electric potency at the center, the heart of the lotus or chakra, the hub of the wheel, as it is esoterically termed in the Oriental teaching, is relatively quiescent. There is just enough energy pouring into the center to produce the preservation of life, the smooth functioning of the instinctual nature, plus a tendency to react, in a fluctuating and unintelligent manner to stimuli coming from the astral plane, via the individual astral body. End of page 229. B. A period wherein there takes place a definite heightening and intensifying of force. The light of the centers is brighter and the solar plexus center, in particular, becomes very active. As yet, all the real life of the man is focused below the diaphragm. The centers above the diaphragm are dim and dull and relatively inactive. The point at the center is, however, more electrical and dynamic. At this stage, the man is the average intelligent citizen, predominantly controlled by his lower nature and his emotional reactions, with what mind he has actively employed in bringing satisfaction to his needs. His centers are the receivers primarily of physical and astral forces, but occasionally respond to mental impacts. C. A period wherein the first transference is being made. This can last a long time and cover several lives. The centers below the diaphragm are fully awakened, their activity is great, their light is vivid, their interrelation is real, so much so that a complete magnetic field has been set up involving the whole area below the diaphragm and becoming potent enough to extend its influence above the diaphragm. The solar plexus becomes the dominant organ in the place of the sacral center, which has so long determined the life of the animal nature. It becomes the recipient of energy streams from below, which it absorbs and starts on its task of deflecting them and transferring them to the higher centers. The man is now the highly intelligent citizen and aspirant. He is conscious of the dualism of his nature, of that which is below and of that which is above, as it has been called, and is ready to tread the probationary path. D. A period wherein the transference is continued. The sacral forces are carried to the throat and the solar plexus forces are carried to the heart. The latter transference is as yet of so small a measure that the effect of the transference is almost negligible. This period is a long and very difficult one. Today, most people are going through periods C and D, which are preparatory to the expression of the mystical life. E. A period wherein the heart and throat centers are brought into activity. The man is creatively intelligent along some line or other and is slowly becoming group conscious. As yet, however, his reactions are still selfishly motivated, though, at the same time, he is subject to cycles of vision and periods of spiritual effort. The mystical life is definitely attracting him. He is becoming the mystic. F. A second period of transference ensues and the ajna center, which governs the integrated personality, becomes active and dominant. The life of feeling and of mystical effort is, at this time, liable to die down temporarily in its expressed fervor and ardent disciplines, and personality integration, personality ambitions, personality aims and personality expression take its place. This is a right and good change and tends correctly to a rounded-out development. It is only temporary, for still the mystic sleeps beneath the outer activity and the intelligent worldly effort, and will emerge again to living endeavor when the mind nature has been fully aroused and is controlling, when desire for mental satisfaction has been satiated and the Son of God is ready to arise and enter the Father's house. During this period, we find the intelligently creative or the powerful man will come to the zenith of his personality life. The centers below the head will all be active and functioning, but the centers below the diaphragm will be subordinated to and controlled by those found above. They are subject then to the conditioning will of the man who is governed at this time by ambition, intellectual expediency and that form of group work which tends to the expression of his personality potency. The ajna center is vivid and potent, the throat center is intensely active and the heart center is rapidly awakening. G. A period wherein the highest head center is brought into radiant activity. This occurs as the result of the uprising, in a fresh and more potent manner, of the mystical instinct, plus, this time, an intelligent approach to reality. The result is twofold. 1. The soul begins to pour its energy into all the etheric or vital centers, via the head center. 2. The point at the heart of each center comes into its first real activity. It becomes radiant, brilliant, magnetic and forceful, so that it dims the light of all that lies around. End of page 230. All the centers in the body are then swept into ordered activity by the forces of love and will. Then takes place the final transference of all the bodily and psychic energies into the head center through the awakening of the center at the base of the spine. Then the great polar opposites, as symbolized and expressed by the head center, the organ of spiritual energy, and the center at the base of the spine, the organ of the material forces, are fused and blended, and from this time on the man is controlled only from above, by the soul. These stages can be recognized as 1. The stage wherein transference is made of all the lower energies into the solar plexus, preparatory to carrying them to the throat and heart centers above the diaphragm. This stage covers not only the process of transference but also that of focusing the forces in the higher centers. The later stages of the path of probation and early on the path of discipleship. Keynote discipline. Objective idealism, plus personality effort. Purification and control. 2. The stage wherein transference is made into the ajna center and the personality life becomes integrated and powerful. The later stages of the path of discipleship and up to the time of the third initiation. Keynote expression of the soul, through the medium of the personality. Objective the understanding of the plan and consequent cooperation with it. 3. Then comes the third and final stage with which we need not concern ourselves, wherein there is a complete blending of the bodily forces, focused through the ajna center, with the soul forces, focused through the head center. It is at this time that there comes the final evocation of the personality will, purified and consecrated, which has been sleeping, coiled like the serpent of wisdom at the base of the spine. This surges upward on the impulse of devotion, aspiration and enlightened will, and thus fuses itself in the head with the spiritual will. This is the final raising, by an act of discriminating determination, of the Kundalini fire. This raising takes place in 3 stages, or impulses. 1. The stage wherein the lower energies are carried to the solar plexus center. 2. The stage wherein these energies, pouring through to the heart, are blended and carried to the throat. 3. The stage wherein all the 5 lower forms of energy are focused in the ajna center in the head. End of chapter 44.